Lucy Stone was a tenacious leader. Her contribution to women's rights and the abolishment of slavery proved this. She stood up for what she believed in and left a legacy that lived long after she was gone. In a society where men were considered superior, Stone did things that other women were afraid to do. She took on many firsts for women everywhere. She set the stage for many women after her to do the same thing. Her fight in the anti-slavery movement and in the feminist movement was progressing quickly. She gave her first speech about women's rights in her brother's pulpit in December of 1847. She soon became the organizer of the first national convention held in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1850.
William Lloyd Garrison wrote, "She's a very superior young woman and has a soul as free as the air."
Lucy Stone was an ardent abolitionist and women's rights activist. She was a follower of William Lloyd Garrison, who published The Liberator, and so she jumped onto the abolitionist movement and was influential in legislation passed for African American rights, but was disappointed that she couldn't achieve the same rights for women in America. She established the National Women's Rights Convention, which has been held annually ever since. She was the first woman from Massachusetts to receive a college degree, and also when she was married, she refused to take her husband's name, which was considered an act of solidarity with other women.
Lucy Stone was born in West Brookfield on August 13, 1818. Stone would soon be fighting for the rights of women and the colored, two traits which one is born with and has no way of changing.
In 1847, Lucy Stone said, "I expect to plead not for the slave only, but for the suffering humanity everywhere. Especially do I mean to labor for the elevation of my sex."
Lucy was born into a time where many believed men were superior. Even her father believed this, and he did not support Lucy in going to school.
In education, in marriage, in religion, in everything, disappointment is the lot of women. It shall be the business of my life to deepen this disappointment in every woman's heart until she bows down to it no longer. I wish that women, instead of being walking showcases, instead of begging of their fathers and brothers the latest and gayest new bonnet, would ask of them their rights.
But that didn't stop Lucy. She paid for her education and became a teacher at the age of 17. This was in order to pay for college. She was self-motivated, and soon Lucy was not only motivating herself but others. Lucy graduated from Oberlin College with honors, which was a huge milestone for the women. Not only was graduating with honors a big step, graduating in general was huge. In 1847, she became the first woman to graduate from college in Massachusetts, but she turned down the honor of writing the commencement speech when she had found that it would be read by a man.
It was in 1855 when Lucy married Henry Blackwell. They joined in holy matrimony with a wedding unlike the rest. During the ceremony, the minister read a statement announcing that Lucy had kept her last name. This was something Lucy felt strongly about, and Henry, being a suffragist and abolitionist, agreed with Lucy on her decision. And so Lucy Stone became the first woman to ever keep her last name after marriage.
The statement said that current marriage laws refuse to recognize the wife as an independent, rational being, while they confer on the husband as injurious and a natural superiority, investing him with legal powers which no honorable man would exercise, and which no man should possess.
Lucy's very bold and courageous steps towards women's rights still wasn't enough. A wife would still have the same amount of rights as a small child would. After entering into the only legal form of slavery, Lucy wasn't allowed to vote in Boston because she did not take her husband's last name in 1879. She had taken the first steps towards a better life for women and was now facing the consequences. But she was still strong, and there were still many more milestones to meet in her lifespan.
Women will not always be a thing. Nothing could deter Stone in her mission for equality. She began public speaking everywhere, and she even became the organizer of the first National Women's Rights Convention in Worcester, 1850. After the first convention in Worcester, she led the women's rights movement. She drafted bills and attended legislative hearings in order to improve the status of women. Lucy was also the president of the 1856 National Women's Rights Convention held in New York. She was driven to make it a better place for women, a place where husbands weren't legally allowed to beat their wives and where wives were not treated as possessions.
In 1857, Stone gave birth to her first and only daughter, Alice Stone Blackwell. She too would be influenced by her mother and become part of the women's rights movement.
An important place in Lucy's life is the Polish Center Chapel. Lucy lived there for a portion of her life. It was also where the offices for the Women's Journal was. The Women's Journal was a newspaper in which Lucy was one of its founders. She helped write, edit, finance, and publish it. Her daughter Alice also contributed to the journal after her mother's death. Along with co-writing the Women's Journal, Lucy continued public speaking. Some of her most known speeches included disappointment in the lot of women and the progress of 50 years.
Lucy's last speech was at the Columbian Exposition in 1893. She died that year of stomach cancer. Her last words to her daughter were, "Make the world better." Even on her last breath, she strived to make the world better. She was a born leader, and she died one too. But her spirit did not die with her. It lived on, in future generations of women. The last milestone Lucy covered was being the first to be cremated in Massachusetts.
Lucy Stone left a long legacy in women's rights. Stone's followers were called Lucy Stoners. After her death, 1,100 people attended her funeral in the November of 1893. Then in 1968, 50-cent stamps were issued for the 150th birth anniversary.
On top of all that, several tributes have been made towards Stone over the years. In 1921, the Lucy Stone League was founded by Ruth Hale. It encouraged women to keep their own names and much, much more.
Stone also has a tribute towards her at the Boston Women's Memorial. In a letter from the mayor's office, Barbara Lee said, "The Boston Women's Memorial is the perfect intersection of public art, community involvement, and women's empowerment. I am so pleased that we are paying public tribute to these three heroic women and their place in Boston's rich history. The Boston Women's Memorial will serve as a lasting reminder of the impact that women have had on the quest for equality and justice, and will inspire countless generations of women to come."
The memorial was dedicated on October 25, 2003, and it is by Meredith Bergman. The sculpture was very complex, not only in the details, but the idea behind it. Lucy is not standing in the memorial because she never puts herself on a pedestal. Also, she is in an inviting position because she always was caring about others.
In the Boston Public Library, there are busts of both Lucy and her daughter, Alice. They are both located in Bates Hall.
Lucy was sculpted in 1892 by Anne Whitney.
Alice was sculpted by Frances Rich and given to the library by the League of Women's Voters of Boston. In the Massachusetts State House, there is a mural of 6 women, including Lucy Stone. The mural is part of the State House Women's Leadership Project and was made by the Massachusetts Foundation for the Humanities. Lucy Stone addressed the Massachusetts legislature here in Senate chambers in 1853, calling for equal rights for women. Throughout her life, she altered history by making powerful speeches and inspiring many generations of women. Even on her last day, she was striving to make the world a better place.